So you've released a very moving song about Remembrance Day called The Unknown Soldier. It also
Yeah,
features Sir Billy Connolly, Sir Anthony Hopkins, and Liam Neeson. What was it like putting it all together?
it was a fantastic experience because I've always been kind of overwhelmed by the beauty of the ceremony of the unknown soldier and his commemoration and representing the fallen soldiers, from the First World War, especially. And I was surprised that no one had sort of tackled it as a song before. And we did it originally to celebrate the return of the young man to the UK in the anniversary of the 100th anniversary, and it got such a lot of attention. I thought, well, I wonder if we can do even more with it, and the idea of representing the home nations with the most familiar Scottish voice probably in the world, that of Billy Connolly, who's a long-time friend of mine, because we were both folkies from the very early days on the transatlantic record label. And I asked Billy if he would like to read the first verse, and he said definitely. He did it straight away. And I said to him, "You don't happen to know Liam Neeson, do you? But we know somebody." He said, I knew somebody that did, and we asked him if he would put us in touch, and Liam said straight away, yeah, he'd love to do it. So he did it. And then I asked Liam, "You don't happen to know Sir Anthony Hopkins, do you?" And he said, "Well, we did do a film 30 years ago. I'll get in touch with him." And rather cheekily, when Sir Anthony had done his beautiful reading, he said, "Sorry, you don't sound Welsh enough. You'll have to do it again." Liam told Sir Anthony that, and he obliged again. And they all had stories and recollections. I mean, Sir Anthony and Billy are nearer to my age, and I had contact with my own grandfather, who was a soldier, joined up in 1916, and my great uncle Billy was in the Guards. He survived too. And then there was someone we all called Uncle Charlie, who was very happy to talk about his First World War experiences. So at his knee, at these guys' knees, I learnt the full horror of the story, and it was always very vivid to me. And this was a chance to do something. So that's how it all came together, and we got the men to the knights to read their passages of the song, and we reorchestrated it a bit with real strings and stuff like that, and that's the result.
Sounds great. And for people who don't know, what is the story of The Unknown Soldier?
It's a fascinating story. Have you got time to hear? I'll do it as briefly as I can, but as a series of events occurred after the war, a British Army chaplain was visiting the battlefields, and in a little village garden, he saw a crude crucifix there with an unknown British soldier who died and had been buried in their garden. And he took this idea back to London and persuaded the authorities that why not bring back a body, an unknown soldier from one of the battlefields, to commemorate all the fallen. So I started to dig a little bit deeper into this, and found that, to my horror, that the Menin Gate Memorial in Ypres has the names of 55,000, British soldiers from the home nations whose bodies were never even found, and that this one single body of the boy that was eventually brought back was to represent all of those, who are scattered all over the battlefields and buried in the mud and whatever, and never were found and given a decent burial, although there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of graves all over that area of Belgium, but those boys were never found. And when you read them, they're all names of boys you would have gone to school with. The names, the surnames are there on the memorial. And I got the idea of opening the whole thing with the more than 50,000 names are carved on Ypres Menin Gate of soldiers who have no known graves, just their destiny and date. And once I got that couplet from, I was away with the song. What happened was they went to 4 or 5 main battlegrounds and exhumed a body from an unknown soldier from each of those. And they took them to a chapel in France where a British general was blindfolded and spun around in the room a few times. And then he just pointed to one of the bodies. They were all draped in the Union flag. And they took that one, and the coffin for him was made from an oak tree felled in Hampton Court Palace. And it was lined with lead from a factory up in Manchester area. And Wales was involved. They tried to involve as many people in the service and in the commemoration as possible. And he was brought to London by boat, by a battleship, brought to Dover, and then transported by train. And in Victoria Station on platform 1, at the end of platform 1, there's a little plaque which says this is where the unknown soldier was rested the night before he was taken to the Abbey. And once he was at Westminster, he was buried in French and Belgian soil. And the stone, the marble tablet under which he is laid, was made from Belgian marble, and the inscription from melted shell cases. And no one is allowed to tread on that grave. That grave has never been allowed to be trodden on. It's swept and cleaned and all that sort of thing. And the final act of poetry, if you like, and is in all the obscenity of war, is that when Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, was married, she asked that her bride's bouquet be placed on the grave, and that has become a tradition that all royal brides place their wedding bouquet on the grave of the unknown soldier.
You mentioned you went to Belgium.
Since the end of the First World War, 7 buglers play the last post in the Menin Gate, which is a thoroughfare through Ypres town centre. It's an open-air cathedral, if you like, to the soldiers who died, and every inch of the walls, inside, outside, I've got the names of young British soldiers, British and Irish soldiers who died in that and were never found. And I went there to pay my respects originally, and I was the only one that night that had brought a wreath, because it wasn't a special day, it was just a day in the life, And they said that there was a young man there, and he said, "Oh, I'm in charge of the wreath. Would you like to lay your wreath tonight?" And I said, "Oh, very much so." And he said, "Well, they go over there." And he said, "Maybe, would you read the exhortation?" I said, "I couldn't do it. I won't be able to do it." I said, "It's too moving." He said, "I think you can do it." So he gave me a card with it, and I read that, "They shall not grow old as we who are left will grow old," and all that. And I barely got through it without, it affects me just to think about it, to be honest with you. And I did that, and my friends were there. We were doing some filming research, and we managed to get that on film, and we've included that in our little video that talks about how the song came about, which is going to be on YouTube, or may even still be on YouTube, or one of those things, and people can check it out. I dare anyone not to be moved by it. And the thing is, I also was very impressed. I performed at the 100th anniversary at the cathedral in Ypres with a full orchestra, and we did it 3 times for 3 different occasions, and I got it right finally on the last one. I just I can't perform it because it's too moving. It gets me every time, because it's not about me, it's about them, the ones who have no voices, and it's I regard it as something that if pride has got anything to do with it, then I'm proud of that effort.
And you're going to be performing in East Grinstead at Chequermead on Friday evening.
Yeah.
How much are you looking forward to it?
I love it. I've been there, it's probably my 5th or 6th time there now, I think. It's a very intimate theatre. It's about 300 or 400 people, I think, maybe more, I'm not quite sure. And you they're around you, sort of thing, not right by the side of you, but they're around you. And, I've always had a lovely night there, and I'm looking very much forward to being there again, So, and I won't be doing the Unknown Soldier, but we might show it if there's a chance. We might play it at the end of the evening, because it's getting very close to Armistice Day.
But while you're here, I have to talk about Streets of London, of course. I mean, did you ever imagine that that song would still get played today and people still love it?
It's really got a funny story, because, well, not funny, interesting possibly. I'd written the song very early on in my writing career, and you have to really, you're too young to remember, there was an area called a period in the 60s which is called the protest song era, if you like. And it started probably with Bob Dylan, as far as most people knew, but actually it was a tradition that was in America for a very long time for politically active people to get the message across. They wrote sort of political songs and songs of protest and so on. And I was sort of thinking, oh, I'd like to do something like that. And I think probably Streets of London was perhaps the second or third song that I ever wrote. And I offered it to a guy that was a semi-professional, who shall be nameless, singer. And he said, oh, no, that's much too sad, mate. So it was already there when I did my first album, but I didn't put it on. But it got heard because I gave it to somebody else, and it was played around the clubs. And my producer, Gus Dudgeon, who went on to produce Elton John and hundreds of other really big acts, said to me, Ralph, you must do one take. And I did it for him on the last track of the album in 1969. And then the next thing was, it just took off. And then in 1974, it became a big hit as well. We did a new recording of it. It became a big hit. Changed my life.
I think the one lyric is, I'll show you something that will make you change your mind.
Never really sort of broken it down to analyze it. It just fitted the tune that I'd got. And I just sort of, I think I could have, I don't know. When you look, you can't, if you've had well, I've had 50 years of playing music, if you think you peaked with your first or second song, what's the rest of it all been about? My life has just absolutely been music, and I say it with some sort of pride on stage. It's what I've done with my life. I've written songs and performed them, and luckily I'm still doing it, and I have no intention of stopping. I'm not dictated to by the vagaries of pop music and the charts and that sort of thing. I just do what I do, and there's an audience out there for me and people that do what I do, and I'm delighted to keep going and keep trying to raise the standards and write better songs and play better guitar and all that.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us, Ralph, and I'm going to be seeing you at Check-A-Meet on Fridays.
Yeah, it'd be really nice to see you, mate. Thanks very much for the chance to talk about that, the other song.
No problem. Thanks, Ralph.
Cheers.